Trump threatens 100% tariffs on imports from China. What to know? Trump tried to play ball or tried to play hardball with China again. The inception point here, because they had a Madrid meeting, right? If we're going to roll back the time, roll back the clock, Donald Trump has been Mr. Tariffs, right? As you guys know, he's Mr. Tariffs. He wants to dominate China through tariffs. It's a really stupid decision from the Trump administration, one that actually undermines America's global international trade design without any sort of industrial base that we could have built in this time frame so that we had some trade to protect, right? And as a tariff terrorist, a tariffist, okay, a tariff fetishist, a man who truly loves to molest the money, okay, molest the bag, put his grubby little paws all over that bag and molest it. Money molestation Trump has decided, or had decided after running on the tariff thing during the election cycle, to follow through on it. This obviously caused a lot of chaos for many titans of industry, I guess, with the exception of those who are already closely aligned with Donald Trump. The ones who were closely aligned with Donald Trump did make out like bandits in this process. There was a lot of speculation that they knew exactly when Donald Trump would turn the dial back on and played the market in an effort to consolidate even more wealth in their hands. There's a little bit of insider trading speculation going on. Well, luckily, we have completely destroyed the SEC, so who's going to actually prosecute this stuff? Ain't nobody's going to do that because he has destroyed the regulatory agencies, right? So all of that was happening for the past couple of months. And then obviously in that process, China being our largest trade partner has a tremendous amount of power in the international marketplace. China decided to retaliate, said, okay, we're stopping all rare earth minerals and magnets and things that you need for your defense sector from actually going to the United States of America. Now, understand that the rare earth minerals are damn near a monopoly in the hands of China. They have spent, since Deng Xiaoping, they have spent the last 30 years building the most robust extraction and processing industries for the rare earth minerals. It's been multiple decades at this point, and refinement and procurement processes, and therefore they have a complete control over it. And these are the materials, the rare earth minerals that you absolutely need. Now, rare earth, ironically enough, contrary to its name, is not actually rare. Like, the minerals are not that rare, right? But the refinement process requires the refinement of the procurement process is obviously very difficult, and it would take a very long time for the rest of the world to build their own refinement facilities rather than just getting it from China. They would never be able to compete with the Chinese facilities. They would never be able to compete with the price point that China offers. And also on top of that, it is quite difficult for them to just like build a robust industrial base to compete against China anyway. And we certainly do not have the ambition here in the United States of America to do such a thing. We don't have the control. We don't have a command economy that could very quickly try to build this industrial base. And also, even if we did, the training and the time frame and the logistics of building this robust industrial base to compete against China would take possibly a decade, right? So it's too little too late. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because China, for this reason, has a tremendous amount of power over global trade policy, okay? You got the command economy. It's just the wrong one. True. Fair. So I'm a geologist. I work with element extraction. He's not even doing that well. He's a fucking idiot, pissing off all the research and industry associated with it with these kickback demands. Yeah, I mean, he's doing everything wrong, okay? He is doing everything wrong. When he said nothing bad happened, only good happened, he actually meant the exact opposite. Nothing good happening, only bad happening. Now, it's already incredibly difficult to build a competitive, robust industrial base in this country without completely restructuring the economy, completely restructuring the political economy, completely restructuring how America operates. Okay, it is far too decentralized and far too capitalist for America to even turn around and be like, yeah, we're just going to be a nation that builds factories now. Good luck. That's not happening unless we become China and overnight magically and have Chinese style top down governance and get people to work instantly. It's just not going to happen. Okay, fake quote. I said it can only good happen. Much more smarter. True. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen in the United States of America. And the administration has been a failure in every fucking capacity, except the only thing that they could rely on in this moment is China's interest in rolling back the clock to pre-2025 levels of trade policy, international trade policy, or even better, pre-2018 levels of global trade policy. Both of those instances are Donald Trump. Donald Trump has actively tried to start this tariff war with China and has failed spectacularly. So what has happened, as far as I understand, is they did this like tariff initiative, this back and forth. Both of these countries postured. And as I told you, China would, in an endless interest to trade max, would go back to the table eventually and offer Trump like a minor W after showing the rest of the world how unstable and how dangerous Donald Trump truly is, right? So they did. They had a Madrid meeting where they got to a tariff stalemate, okay? They went to Madrid. This was a couple months ago where they decided, okay, we're just going to back down and we're just going to go back to business as usual. You'll increase your tariffs. We won't buy your soybeans. We'll buy it from we'll buy it from some other country. We'll buy from Argentina. We'll cook key sectors for you. You'll try to cook our key sectors, whatever, right? But somewhere along the way, America started adding additional export controls, okay? So then China, coming back from its national holiday, immediately were like, oh, you're doing export controls? Okay, we're bringing back the rare earth minerals export controls, and we're just going to now have additional security clearances if you want to fucking purchase if you want to purchase rare earth minerals from us. And it's basically like a nuclear option for China. This is an incredibly important part of China's global trade policy in general. So I suspect that they're not actually invested in stopping rare earth minerals from being exported to the United States of America at all. Because I feel like that if they were to ban it altogether, I mean, that almost is a self-own, okay? Because as long as they still control this, as long as they still control it and give assurances to every country that they can continue exporting this stuff or importing this stuff, then, people will go along with business as usual politics. So please, can you check out Zach from the Green Party in the UK? It'd be awesome. Yeah, I'm going to literally do his podcast next week. Anyway, many people actually do not have the full picture of this rare earth crisis. Here it is. 1, rare earth is not rare, but only China has the refining ability, especially the ability to refine heavy rare earths. Even rare earths from the United States need to be transported to China for refining. Japan and Australia are 2 main countries outside of China that can refine rare earths, but only light rare earths, and the cost is very high. Their heavy rare earths also rely on imports from China. The United States currently has some rare earth inventory, and the CIA has been working hard to steal 3 things from China in the past months. 1, smuggling rare earths out of China. 2, Chinese rare earth technicians. 3, China's refining equipment. Judging from Trump's current level of anger, CIA is not very successful. China not only restricts the export of rare earths, also earth refining equipments. At the same time, China stipulates that any foreign enterprise that uses Chinese rare earths cannot sell products containing rare earths to buyers who have not been approved by China. Otherwise, no rare earth for you next time. Rare earths are used in many key places. The military industry enterprises, F-35 and nuclear submarines require rare earths. Automobile, both NEV and oil cars need rare earth. Ford almost stopped production due to the rare earth crisis last time. Chips, specific rare earth elements, dysprosium and terbium, required for chip manufacturing according to Chinese regulation. TSMC must obtain approval from China before selling chips to the United States. Even ASML has announced that their delivery times have been delayed due to China's new rare earth regulations. Aerospace and wind power, aircraft engines and turbine blades for wind turbines require the use of rare earth materials to withstand extreme high temperature environments. Under optimistic estimates, it will take the United States and its allies 10 years to build its rare earth supply chain. That is the most optimistic estimate. For the record, according to the current level of decline in their manufacturing industry, it may take forever. What does China want? Obviously, it's not 100% tariffs. I said a few months ago that China should trade rare earths for Taiwan, and I still think so now. I think China hitting the nuclear option on their trade policy like this is specifically done to say, look, we have a lot of power, we have a lot of influence. It took us many, many years to get here, but you can't just like fucking keep making these like ridiculous decisions to try to undermine whatever ambitions we have. The US calls us the greatest threat and our peer adversary, but its actions against us seem to be tailored to smaller, weaker nations that it thinks it can bully to submission. You are either unserious in your pursuit or simply incapable of facing us, says Top G, which is not wrong. America and its trade policy against China still resembles bully ball. It still resembles like the way America operates around the globe against states that have very little sovereignty. I think the faster America understands that China is a peer and must be taken seriously, the easier this process will be for everybody involved. And I'm not saying this because I like glaze China or whatever. I'm saying this because it's incredibly stupid and we will just continue having these sorts of issues as long as America continues to be this like belligerent bully around the globe. You can do this to our European allies because they are vassal states. You can do this to the Gulf nation states to a certain degree, okay? Because their entire security apparatus and their entire monarchy relies on a constant flow of American weapons and American security contracts so that they can keep the public at bay if necessary. Right now in China are basically like shrugging, saying we don't need anything from the USA and they need everything from us. Seems to be the current state of mind out here. People just Bing chilling. Yeah, of course. US is delusional. They thought they could take on Iran. Yeah, I don't know where this goes because I don't know how America operates. I can predict how China will operate because China has been very straightforward about not wanting to be bullied or about how much influence and power that they have and about how they just want to go back to the previous international trade design because it suits their 15-year, 20-year, multiple decade projects, if that makes sense. But Steve Ho, quant research from Bloomberg, tries to answer the question, why did China suddenly show its full hand? P.S. anything, Brad Setzer says, P.S. anything by Keith Bradshaw on the China's control over rare earths is worth reading closely. China clearly decided to show its full hand yesterday. It thinks it has the high cards, which it does. Okay, this is the most plausible explanation that people are pointing to, which is the Chinese are responding directly to U.S. escalation on export controls with a 50% rule rolled out last week. It was clear that they would respond to this, which was a clear violation of the agreement in Madrid not to take any new measures. Because remember, they did a stalemate, right? They went to Madrid, they had a conversation, and they both parties basically backed away. Both parties basically backed away from the tit-for-tat tariff war that they were engaging in. And then this 50% rule rolled out in the United States, additional export controls, basically. This was a deliberate move by those favoring decoupling at commerce to up the ante, and neither the White House or the Commerce were fully informed, let alone about the potential, actually, certainty that Beijing would respond. Let's get to the causation straight here. Now, this is speculation. This is speculation, okay? Brad Setzer response says, Paul, that is a serious claim, and I would appreciate your evidence here as you generally lean against it. I read this Skadden report last night. The BIS rule expands export restrictions to entities 50% owned by parties on the entity and military end user lists. This is a new U.S. Commerce Department interim final rule that expanded the number of entities subject to export control restrictions by extending the entity list and MEU list restrictions to non-U.S. entities 50% or more owned directly or indirectly by listed parties effective as of September 29th, 2025, okay? Greatly increasing the number of entities subject to these restrictions and requiring comprehensive ownership analyses as a part of due diligence will make it more complicated and time-consuming for exporters to ensure compliance with the law and increases risk of violations. From the Chinese side, they see this as additional export controls that America is subjecting to all entities, but technically, it's one that they could use against China. The rule applies to all transactions subject to U.S. Export Administration regulations, including companies with U.S. parts or technologies in their supply chains, whether based in the U.S. or not. So then, Brad Setzer says, that's a serious claim. I would appreciate your evidence here as you generally lean against most U.S. controls. Starting with the backgrounds, as I haven't followed closely, why is the 50% rule existential for China in a way that other export controls were not? I did not say existential, Paul retorts. He says the 50% rule was pushed out by Commerce just before shutdown. it could impact as many as 10,000 companies. Both sides of Madrid agreed not to do just this type of thing during negotiations. Beijing's response was delayed by national holiday, but is the direct response to U.S. action, which was not approved at cabinet level. Clearly, no one told the president that Beijing would respond and strongly breach the solemn agreement at Madrid. I think this, of all the reasons I read, seems to be the most plausible explanation for why China suddenly announced new rare earth export controls is a direct response to what it perceived as a U.S. provocation and a violation of the truce. I think part of the miscalculation between U.S. and China stems from the different constitutions of U.S.-Chinese governments. I mean, this in and of itself is, again, more speculation that like America's attitude on international trade policy is more decentralized, whereas the Chinese one is more top-down, more centralized, and therefore, when there are any decisions that are being made, the administration itself is not thinking about like Chinese retaliation and can sometimes feel blindsided, as they seemingly are today, when China implemented these their own version of export controls for perhaps the most consequential, one of the most consequential exports that they have. China's full hand will be total shutout of access to China's supply chain for U.S. business and coordinated dumping of USD with other countries that are looking to evacuate their reserve positions. People still don't understand China's leverage. I mean, yeah, that would be the most maximalist, most nuclear option of all time, except that nuclear option would hurt China's short-term and long-term goals. China benefits greatly from maintaining U.S. debt for this reason. It's leverage. They are tied at the hip to the United States of America, and therefore it makes it much harder for the United States of America to try and increasingly engage in militant escalations against China, because they have leverage. Like, they are in this together. Trade and China's irreplaceable nature as the manufacturing hub of the entire planet is part of the reason why it has been allowed to socialize without too much Western interference. Okay? This is very important to understand, because when you think about the Cold War between the USSR and Western capitalist nations, the USSR did not have the same network of trade that the Western capitalist nations relied on for their daily existence. Correct. You guys spent $5 billion bombing the Houthis. You depleted your missile stocks and couldn't make enough to replace them. They ran away from the Red Sea. Things like this shape our reaction to you. You need us, and we know it. Yeah, it's normally Top G is making cracking jokes, but Top G is absolutely correct here. America and its defense industry relies on Chinese manufacturing at different points of America's manufacturing. We think like, oh, well, this stuff is domestic, right? The American defense industry is a manufacturing industry that is domestic, that is at the domestic level. But the way that global trade is designed makes it so that it's impossible to have everything kept neatly within the confines of the United States of America. Like here, this is a great example of this. Each F-35 requires 418 kilograms of rare earths. An Arleigh Burke destroyer requires 2,600 kilograms, and a Virginia-class submarine requires 4,600 kilograms. With the majority of U.S. imports coming from China, unprecedented crisis. Do you understand now? This is just some of the things. China is helping us save money on our military. Thank you. I mean, it's everything. It's China makes everything. China makes components that are necessary. Do you understand? Like, China is the manufacturing hub of the planet. So attacking China like this with a weird tariff war that nobody asked for, that redesigns international trade policy, is unimaginably stupid, especially because we get fucked over a lot harder than China does in this process. Okay? We don't even have a domestic capability to make up for the lack of rare earth refinement facilities that we would need if we were to decouple from China completely. By the way, this is not just for rare earth minerals either. This is for everything. This is what I was trying to explain when talking about trade policy prior to Donald Trump even initiating this tariff war. The reality of the matter is, even if you were to go and like invade Greenland, okay, you still don't have the factories for refinement. You don't have the equipment. You don't have the know-how. You don't have the capacity to recreate these factories that are competitive enough that you can make up for the lack of supply. For China, this took 40 fucking years. You're talking about a country that operates differently than the United States of America does, where, you know, whatever their design is, whatever their goals are, they follow it through, okay? And they have a tremendous amount of control over everything that happens inside of this massive country. When they decide, like, we are focusing our efforts on building real estate, because they control all flows of capital, they literally will turn around and start funding those initiatives when they are like, okay, we're still going to continue developing, but also, you know, this has become a bit of a bubble. We're going to move away from this. Then they can do that as well. America does not have this same process. Instead of investing trillions in the high-tech manufacturing in America, we're building fucking AI data centers for a speculation bubble. Even if we wanted to, I don't know if we could replace China at this point. China is the only major world economy where food prices are declining. Source Financial Times. Okay, so where the fuck were we? I don't know how we got here. But basically, I think this, of all the reasons I've read, seems the most plausible explanation for why China suddenly announced the new rare earth export controls. It's not even new. This is something that they entertained before in the previous iteration, before the Madrid showdown and the Madrid stalemate. It's a direct response to what it perceives the U.S. provocation and violation of the truce. I think part of the miscalculation between U.S. and China stems from the different constitutions of the U.S. and Chinese governments. China's government is more top-down, centralized, and its policies are consistent mostly. U.S. government can be more decentralized with different power centers, factions, and varying degrees of hawkishness. Hence, policies are not necessarily mutually consistent, and Trump famously likes it this way, a team of rivals. So from Beijing's perspective, the U.S. seems inconsistent and repeatedly reneges promises. By this point, I think Beijing also understands that this is just a feature of U.S. government, but they are like, we don't care. We'll respond to your policies in their entirety as though they are made from a unified perspective, even if they all seem at times mutually contradictory and inconsistent, and all set policies in response accordingly. This is a quant researcher at Bloomberg. I think China wants stability. They have shown that they want stability more than anything else. And America keeps showing instability. America keeps behaving in increasingly belligerent ways. And I think this is the reason why China is showing its hand here. But I don't think they'll follow through on this. And the reason why I don't think they'll follow through on this is because it would truly brick international trade, which is ironically what they are trying to stop from happening. Okay? So sometimes you have to play hardball in order to get America back to the table and show them your capabilities so that you can force America to behave in a consistent manner. That is what I think is going on here. Cloud District says, I have some doubt that China will actually go through with this. It's kind of become their modus operandi with diplomatic disputes to use the rare earth card. They've done the same to Japan in the 2010s over maritime disputes, but it was never permanent. Yeah, well, part of the reason why it's not permanent is because if people thought that China would behave like this, would take a maximalist position on these key materials that are necessary for defense production and numerous other things, then it would force the hand of all of the other countries to basically look for a more reliable trade partner that can, at a higher price point, of course, because they're never going to be able to compete with the Chinese prices, but at a higher price point, offer reliable procurement facilities. Now, currently, China has the monopoly on this, damn near the monopoly on this. I think it's like they have damn near a monopoly on the extraction, and they certainly have a monopoly on the procurement. Okay, there are other countries, as some of the analysts that I just read to you have mentioned. There's some procurement in Australia and Japan, but it's not, it's nothing in comparison to how massive the Chinese refinement processes look like. And it's especially like the scale and how quickly they are capable of delivering these necessary supplies at a price point that is impossible to compete with is what keeps everything going. Extraction and procurement are the same thing. Refinement is once you have the ore. Refinement. China has a strong position as well because of its highly integrated supply chains. While most of the developed world specialized and turned to services while hollowing out their industrial capacity during globalization, China kept a broad national framework that would let them hold out for longer in a long-term dispute. Yes.
Economy now and fears that many of the things you buy could get a lot more expensive after President Trump threatened stiff new tariffs on imports from China. The markets didn't like it either. The Dow, NASDAQ, and S&P 500 all closing down sharply on Friday. NBC's Julie Sirkin is at the White House for us with more on these tariffs. Julie, good morning.
Laura, good morning. Yeah, that threat from President Trump on new Chinese tariffs is immediately having an impact on the economy and on your wallet. The S&P slide was the biggest drop since global tariffs were announced back in April. This latest tariff rate will be at a 100% rate, and that's on top of already existing taxes on everything from steel and aluminum, currently at 50%, to toys and furniture. Trump on social media writing the new tariffs would begin next month and are in response to China taking a, quote, extraordinarily aggressive position on trade because China announced major restrictions on exporting rare earth minerals, with China, remember, supplying 90% of those minerals to the rest of the world. Now, those minerals are critical because they're used to make phones, cars, and airplanes, even military equipment, and tensions have been escalating between Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping for months. The two leaders are in a back-and-forth trade war, but are set to meet in person in 2 weeks in South Korea. But here's the thing, the president suggested he could cancel that meeting based on China's latest moves. Laura?
So, yeah. The markets took a nosedive yesterday after China said we're enforcing new tighter export controls on rare earth minerals. It's so stupid for the U.S. to spend years boasting about excluding China from high-tech equipment via chip restrictions and then whine and whine when China retaliates. I know. That's why it's so funny that, like, when we get a fucking taste, just even a little bit of a taste of what we've done to China forever, all of a sudden it's like, how dare you do this to us? It kind of fucking reminds me of like the dynamic between me and my haters a little bit, where it's like I even retaliate a little bit in kind. They can spend days and days being like, dude, you're fucking murdering your dog, you're abusing your dog. And I retaliate even a little bit in kind and be like, dude, the fuck are you talking about? You're horrible at like the way that you've treated animals. They go, oh my God, how dare, this is the most insane thing. How dare you? You have really done it now. You know what I mean? You've really done it now. It's like, bitch, what do you mean? Look at the way you've behaved for the past couple of days. You're out of your fucking mind. It's like we get to do whatever the fuck we want to China, to anybody around the planet. And the moment that you turn around, the moment that China turns around and does anything in kind, it's just like, how dare you? This double standard is so ridiculous. And it's interesting because it's like, there is no need for this. Trump did this almost entirely on his own. Okay, that's what's so crazy about it. Because like the craziest part about this is it's very clear that China just wants to keep doing trade. They have their own goals. They have their own ambitions. They have their own plans on how international trade should work. It was a design that America enforced upon the world. It was a design that Western capitalists enforced upon the world. It was quite beneficial for the labor aristocracy. Okay. And now Donald Trump has decided to brick it. Okay. He's decided to brick it for no reason other than because he loves money molestation. I think China's goals here are simply to roll back the clock on the tariff mania. Okay. That's it. Meanwhile, Bitcoin also tanked. Breaking, look at this. A new crypto account was opened yesterday morning, 30 minutes before Trump's announcement of 100% tariffs on China. It had a huge multi-million-dollar levered Bitcoin short position. The market dumped. The trader made a profit of $192 million in 2 hours. Unusual. Is it unusual? Things that used to be previously unusual are now becoming much more usual, I would say. This has happened every single time. Insider trading has happened every single time, not just on the crypto market, but also on the stock market as well. Okay, what is this? Thinking ChatGPT is useless is midwit. It's a magic box that answers any question you ask it, from levels ranging from modestly coherent to extremely proficient. If you haven't bothered to figure it out, to derive some utility out of it, then you're just being lazy, to be honest. 125.25 from Nate Bronze. I'm just one person and my programming needs are somewhat unusual, building various kinds of statistical forecasting models, but I'm just not seeing the consistent productivity gains from LLMs that I would have expected if you'd asked me 6 months ago. I'm glad. Look, he tried it, he did it, and then he's back to the normal position, which is, not the best. He's no longer Nate Hardstock Bronze. He is Nate Iron now. He's officially Nate Iron. He's been demoted, okay? He lost too many. He lost too many ranking games, okay? He has deranked. I'm deranking him. Yeah, his elo is lower now. But yeah, lesser focused on story as of late, China has dropped its insistence on maintaining the developing country status with the WTO, which grants exemptions to following free trade rules. This has been a multi-decade dispute, so ending it signals China is serious about trying to normalize international trade to pre-2016 practice and about being a counterweight to Trump's trade policy. Yes, this has been, I mean, look, it has been quite beneficial for China. It's no longer a developing country. It makes sense. It is a developed country. Americans constantly, and the Western world constantly cries about China not playing by the rules, okay? That's their number one thing. They always complain about this shit. They always are like, China's never playing by the rules. They do too much. We do subsidies the right way. They do subsidies the wrong way. Now, obviously, in that situation, if you want to outcompete China, you have to, unfortunately, become more like China, right? What I mean by this is, for those of you who don't understand what I'm saying, every country subsidizes its industrial output in order to, keep prices level, right? The problem is, because China has central planning, they can just really subsidize it, right? It doesn't matter. They have a planned economy, so they can move money around in a way that other countries can't compete with. And they get very mad. This is how you arrive at, cars that are just as good, if not better, than domestic production cars in each individual European country, and certainly in the United States of America as well, at a price point that is impossible to compete with. And the only way to compete against that would be to use the pre-existing subsidy vehicles that every capitalist country has, but this time with serious controls on pricing and also serious controls on where those subsidies go. In the Western world, when we subsidize our production, it doesn't just go to keeping prices low. It usually just goes to maximizing profits. If you don't have any interest in maximizing profits, then you can fucking make cars cheaper. The problem is we don't do that. That's never been a consideration for any of the Western liberal capitalist countries. So instead of Western countries becoming more like China, they just keep crying to the referees, okay? Few citizens dare to protest China's massive build out of solar energy and efficient public transit. New York Times subhead writer must have remembered it had to make China sound bad at the end. How China powers its electric cars and high-speed trains. China's building a network of ultra-high voltage power lines that carry solar and wind energy hundreds and even thousands of miles as few citizens dare to protest. Why would anybody protest against this? Why would anybody be like, I hate having a network of ultra-high voltage power lines that carry solar and wind energy hundreds and even thousands of miles? I hate that. Why the fuck would anybody protest against that? Why? This is like the meme, the New York Times China headline generator meme, okay? China invents new bone glue, but at what cost? And if you're talking about eminent domain and protests against stuff like that, the Chinese government's attitude towards things of that nature is seemingly even better than the American one, as far as I understand. They very famously have a practice of what are they called? Like nail houses or whatever, where there are just some people who are too stubborn. So the Chinese government will be like, all right, fuck it. We'll just build around it. That's number one. And number two, even before it gets to that point, they literally will give you extra money and relocate you at a higher price point than the actual fucking home that you currently own. I wish America did that, because sometimes you need to do that. Okay? But we don't do that. And then we masquerade that as this illusion of freedom. The highest priority should be the material improvement of all citizens. And yet in America, we are so hyper individualistic that we've decided that that is actually wrong and bad. The horror. There's a single power line. China has 41 others. Each is capable of carrying more electricity than any utility transmission line in the United States. That's partly because China is using technology that makes its lines far more efficient than almost anywhere else in the world. The feat is owed to China's ambitious national energy policies and the fact that few residents along the path of these lines dare object, even though the lines emit static electricity that local people said they could feel when holding a metal fishing pole. As long as you don't fish directly underneath the wires and keeping fishing line from getting tangled in the wires is basically fine, Shujia, an air conditioning repairman, said, matter-of-factly, showing off a 6-inch fish he had just caught. The cost of labor is too much in the U.S. for it to be a manufacturing country. Will never get lower if they want to keep healthcare, education, and housing industries private. You cannot keep eating away from your labor force indefinitely and force their wages lower and lower. People do not operate efficiently when they're unhealthy and unhappy. Yes, labor is the most malleable aspect of production. And America and American capitalists know this, which is why they fucking outsourced it. They outsourced to countries that are lower cost by design due to their underdeveloped status or due to the fact that they were, dominated by colonial powers in its history, due to consistently still being dominated to a certain degree by colonial powers. Like, there are a multitude of different reasons, right? But the only way to make this process entirely cost efficient, and I cannot believe I have to repeat this over and over again, is to become more Chinese, okay? You just have to be more Chinese. We have to become Chinese now, okay? Not today, not tomorrow, yesterday. We have to be more Chinese immediately. What I mean by that is nationalization. First socialization and then nationalization. Because if we are simply only invested in profit centers, if we're simply invested exclusively in stocks go higher at all costs, if we're only invested in profits and we put the interest of profit over the interest of people, we're just going to have this incredibly bloated fake economy that relies on an increasingly worse labor force that is constantly being dominated, that is relegated to like this neo-feudal status where we have like a bunch of techno serfs running around with a handful of unimaginably wealthy individuals. One of the best examples of this is healthcare. Or even schooling, right? When you look at the way healthcare operates in this country, it's insane. It's one of the most insane things that we have. The fact that this process that is almost entirely controlled by the government, or at least has like significant levels of control by the government in every single country, with the exception of the United States of America, and how bloated that healthcare system has become, should be evidence that we must become Chinese immediately. There is no world in which private profiteers should be dominating this sector. It doesn't even make sense from a capitalist framework, by the way, which is precisely the reason why so many other capitalist social democracies do not allow private healthcare to dominate the field, even though that is also changing a little bit, okay? It's so fucking stupid. And Americans have deluded themselves into thinking, no, our healthcare is the best, actually, when all evidence points to the contrary. All evidence points to the exact opposite. Shut the fuck up. You are so American right now. Even as European, feel how unhealthy and unthoughtful is what you are saying, not because you are wrong, but because your logic is messed up. What do you mean? What? Capitalism is retardé and counterproductive. Please broaden your mind. You are so Western. You don't understand what you are saying. What? I don't even think you disagree with me on this. Also, you're a European who thinks I'm too Western? Wait, you're Western. Probably more than me. And you think I'm too pro-capitalist when I'm describing the importance of moving away from capitalism, even from a self-preservation perspective? It's confusing. Anyway, Hasan, are you saying that in order for material conditions to improve, the state has to make them improve? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't. It does not at all. I'm saying that in order for material conditions for everyone to improve, the state has to move away from the previous model of profit first, okay? And the greatest evidence for this is on healthcare. Even the neoclassical pro-capitalist economists have recognized that healthcare is an inelastic demand good or service, okay? Healthcare has inelastic demand, as in, if you don't have healthcare, you fucking die, okay? If you do not have healthcare, you die. Therefore, there is no price point. You will pay whatever price is required to pay for it. And instead of that being perhaps the greatest fucking evidence for why there needs to be heavy government intervention, if not in complete nationalization in this field, in this sector, okay? Americans have decided, no, we'll just kick the can down the road and we'll just keep subsidizing the private sector and the prices will continue expanding. We've done this for everything. We've done this for education, specifically higher education, and even lower education is now getting to that degree as well. We've done this for healthcare. We've done this for housing. These are three things that are, in order of priority, some of the most important things that we need. Education is a necessity for social cohesion and upward social mobility. Healthcare and shelter is obviously a necessity for survival, right? It makes no sense. And yet, for some weird reason, we've decided, nah, it's fine. We estimate that poor health subtracts more than 10% from the level of U.S. GDP, the Goldman economist wrote. Yet lawmakers balk at spending tax dollars to provide universal health care. Go figure. And it's really the stupidest fucking argument of all time, too. Every argument that has been designed against free health care has always been a fucking lie. Like they'll say, oh, this is indentured servitude. This is slavery. You can't like force doctors to provide health care. That would be slavery. It's like, no, that's not. I mean, it's like saying fucking jury duty would be slavery or some shit. There's plenty of things that people, public servants do, right? Policing is not considered slavery. Firefighters are not engaging in, we're not forcing firefighters to fight fire and it's slavery. We don't consider it that way. So I don't know why education and health is seen in this regard if it was nationalized. The military is not fucking slavery. It is damn closer to slavery than any of the other public sectors that I just mentioned. Okay? So that argument is fucking idiotic. Every argument that is that has been advanced in perpetuity against socialization of medicine, socialization of healthcare, or nationalization of healthcare is stupid. It makes no sense. It is just a way to keep people fearful. And perhaps one of the dumbest arguments is the notion that this would be too costly to do. It would literally be cheaper for the country. It would be cheaper for every single person to be covered under a universal program handled by the government. You wouldn't even need to hire too many people. The same processors would still have to work for the government. You would just, obviously the executives would be fired in that situation, but I don't think anybody gives a fuck about insurance executives. And the cost, the out-of-pocket cost of this process for the average American citizen would literally be cheaper. You would be paying a far lower premium in the form of taxes that go to this massive insurance pool. It's so fucking stupid. And yet, people still advocate against it. Good example, even within the capitalist U.S., is Chattanooga, Tennessee has the best internet in the country. Of course, I don't even bring up Chattanooga in this goddamn chat. It makes me so mad. Yes, Chattanooga, Tennessee is a great example of this. It has the best internet in the country because the city took broadband under municipal control and built the infrastructure. There's no argument for competition because, as you know, as an Angelino, there are local service monopolies. I know. And of course, because that was such a successful program in offering people the best service as a municipality, that what did the big what did the big internet service providers do? Immediately make it illegal by lobbying in every other municipality to ensure that this never happens again. The state is an incredibly powerful entity, and yet in the United States of America, we use the unimaginable, awesome power of the state to benefit capital owners rather than use the state to keep capital owners at bay and their endless need for profits at bay. We don't use the state in the way that other countries do. And of course, even in other countries, as long as there are capital owners, as long as there is an endless need for profit, slowly but surely, through crippling austerity measures, the state-owned sectors will inevitably diminish in their services, in the products and the goods that they offer. And ultimately, capitalists will come in and take it over and privatize. And then at first, that privatization might look like there are better options out there, especially for those who have the power to pay for it. But little by little, without you realizing it, over the course of many decades sometimes, the service gets worse, the service is not as reliable, and it becomes even more costly because these guys, unlike the state, have no interest in ensuring that these services run. The state's highest priority is supposed to be to improve the material conditions of every single citizen. A company's highest priority is profits. It's profit generation. Chinese GDP, I make a product. I sell a product for $100. I have now added $100 to the GDP. American GDP, I make a product for $100. I sell the rights of the product for $100. I purchase graphic card usage rights back from them for $100. I have now added $300 to the GDP. Now, this is to talk about like the little bubble, the AI bubble. Okay, this is a way to explain the AI bubble. But I think it's far worse when you think about healthcare. I always go back to healthcare because it's like one of the most obvious points of pain for the average American okay? Because the entirety of the private healthcare system is just a bloated middleman with no interest in actually keeping costs low at all. It does not need to exist. It's just fake. It's fake. We built it, we designed it just so a middleman can make money. And it's not even like all the workers in that middleman sector that are making money. It's the fucking owners that are making money. It's just completely made up. Yeah, Americans like to say tofu construction. Tofu dreg construction when talking about China. We have a tofu economy. We have the tofu dreg economy, okay? There is no need for this expensive, bloated middleman to exist at all. Literally, there is no need for it at all. It makes no sense. Everything is built around con men conning one another. Bro, during COVID, I made 32 an hour. Do you want me to make 30 an hour or something? Exactly. Like, if you were to use Andrew as an example, okay? Let's say you make $30 an hour instead of $32 an hour. But in the same time frame, because this is now a nationalized service, things are cheaper. The government has a higher priority to offer a better point of service and therefore actually has to hire a bunch more nurses, right? Or a bunch more healthcare professionals that actually are doing the healthcare, not the pencil pushers. All of a sudden, you're doing $30 an hour. Things are cheaper overall, and you get to work less. It's not as stressful, and you get to provide better care to your patients. I make way more than that now, thank God. You get the point. I think most people would agree with that.